John DiGilio is one of those guys in the underworld that you can't help thinking that had he taken a slight left instead of a slight right, his whole life would have been different. He would have been a successful human being. I do think later on, and maybe because of his career as a fighter, he did have some mental health problems, but that's sort of a lot of people, and they're successful. But anyway, he was called Johnny D. He was with the Genovese crime family. He was active in the mob from the very, very late 50s up until the 1980s when, of course, they murdered him. DiGilio had been a pro boxer, as I said, of some note, too. He fought Golden Gloves, then he turned pro. He fought 28 matches. He lost 10. But in fairness, he fought almost 300 rounds within those 28 matches. That's the kind of fighter that if you're managing somebody, you don't want him to fight DiGilio because he's going to run him into the ground. So you do avoid a guy like that. Anyway, he gave that up, and as I say, in the very late 50s, probably 59, he entered the Genovese family under Vito Genovese. He worked for Frank Tieri and Benny Malangone, Malangone. I got to work on these pronunciations. DiGilio rose up in the ranks very quickly. In 1968, there were some goof-ups. In 68, he was arrested on extortion charges. Listen to this. He had given out 2 loans for $1,000 each. This is in 1966 and 67 to a New Jersey guy who paid $7,400 in interest. And that's before he got to the principal. Imagine that. So anyway, the guy says, I'm not paying anymore. DiGilio, without thinking, calls him up. And he says, I'm going to kill you, and blah, blah, blah. The guy records his voice. It went to court. It went on for a long time. The prosecution couldn't, actually it was defense made the prosecution point out that they can't positively identify his voice as a voice print. And anyway, he was acquitted in 1970, as remarkable as that is. I mean, everyone knew he was calling the guy, threatening him. It wasn't just one call, but it was a lot of calls. 1970s, mid-1970s, he joins the ILA, International Longshoremen's Association, Local 1588 in Bayonne. Unlike virtually everyone else in the ILA, which is an incredibly corrupt union, I mean, just remarkably corrupt union, dazzlingly corrupt, he actually worked on the docks. He worked on a boat, and he did some time on the docks as well. So he actually he knew what he was doing, but unfortunately he used that position to extort businesses. If you want to land here, unload your boat, you can, but you got to pay first. And of course, that was the story of the ILA in general, isn't it? In 1986, he's making so much money. He's so powerful. He's so useful in really closing the docks. They did close eventually. They all moved down south. That Fortune magazine named him number 39 on a list of 50 most powerful mafiosos in the U.S. That's not good, because then you come to the attention of the FBI and Treasury Department, everybody else. 1988, DiGilio and 3 others, a guy named Donald Carson, who was the executive VP at the International Longshoremen's Union. He was also the treasurer of the local union, 1588, in the ILA, a trucking company owner named Anthony Gallagher and his cousin, Anthony Sharkey. They're all indicted on federal racketeering charges. So the bosses tell DiGilio, look, get a lawyer, you'll work it out. He refuses. He says, I'm brilliant and I'm going to fight my own trial, which is always a stupid idea. The bosses were livid, and rightfully it should have been. On April 17, 1988, DiGilio is acquitted of racketeering, so he was right. He could defend himself, but the other 3 guys who were much, much more important to the mob than DiGilio went to jail. And when, as an example, Carson, who had control of that local, when he went to jail in this trial, he had to resign his position, and then the Gambinos moved in overnight, and they pushed all the Genovese guys out. They took that position. So the family's pissed. At the end of the trial, DiGilio disappears. He just vanishes off the face of the earth. Sometime later, May 26, 1988, he's found floating in a mortician's bag in the Hackensack River. What a lovely river that is, too, in Jersey. One of his credit cards was found in his rear end so that authorities could identify who he was. They wanted it known that they had killed this guy, that he wasn't following orders. I should say during the trial, too, he threatened to punch the prosecutors. He did a lot of strange things. He picked up a bag of evidence and said, "This is all garbage," and threw it in the garbage. Unstable behavior. He could have been playing that up to the hill, too, to avoid, or if he was convicted, maybe do time in a medical institution instead. But anyway, he ends up dead. His killer was a guy named Louis Arrechicchio, who was the brother-in-law of a very powerful New Jersey State Senator John Lynch, who I think was the president of the New Jersey State Senate at one point. Anyway, he was also involved in law enforcement earlier before that. Anyway, Arrechicchio goes to jail, does his time, he gets out, he takes over DiGilio's crew, and he died on January 5, 2022, only at age 62.
Good evening. John is on vacation. Jim Ryan joins me tonight. And tonight, New Jersey law enforcement officials are saying they were right. Mobster John DiGilio, who vanished from his Bayonne apartment, was murdered. The killers even wrapped up the body for law officials and put it in a credit card so there would be no mistakes about the victim. Steve Powers reports on today's discovery in New Jersey.
The setting couldn't have been more tranquil. A quiet marina in Karlstad, New Jersey, about 8 miles from New York. The find couldn't have been more violent. A man who was fishing spotted a bag, and he called police. Police pulled the bag from the water, opened it, and found a body with several shots to the head. It was a fully clothed man. And in the bag, they found a Visa credit card. The name on it, John DiGilio.
We have since, within the last, approximately last hour, been able to make a positive fingerprint identification from latents from the body with known prints of John DiGilio. That is, in fact, John DiGilio, who has been missing for approximately 2 weeks.
Is your investigation proceeding along the lines of a gangland hit?
He was awaiting sentencing. There were other prosecutions related to him. I think it would not be unreasonable to suggest that we believe that the reason that his activities, his criminal activities, were related to, and the individuals that he may have been associated with were related to his death.
Authorities say DiGilio controlled loan sharking and the labor rackets on the Hudson waterfront, but was on the outs with his boss because of his flamboyant style. He even served as his own attorney in a federal waterfront racketeering trial that ended in his acquittal last month. Recently published reports linked DiGilio with the death of millionaire conman Irwin Schiff, known as the Fat Man. He took 2 bullets to the head last August 8th as he dined out in an Upper East Side restaurant. Reports say the reputed head of the Genovese crime family, Vincent the Chin Gigante, wanted Schiff bumped off for skimming mob construction payoff money to support the Fat Man's opulent lifestyle, including beautiful women. As the story goes, DiGilio owed the Chin a favor, and the favor was killing Irwin Schiff. DiGilio supposedly got a low-level hood from New Jersey crew boss Joseph Pagano to pull the trigger. So now authorities think they know who killed Irwin Schiff. And the next question is, who killed John DiGilio? Steve Powers, Fox News, Channel 5.